Hello, East Brunswick. I wanted to give everybody an update on what's going on with our redevelopment projects here in town. I know it's been quite some time since we had an opportunity to really talk about that, and I know that as people drive by the highway and look out at some of these projects, it's a bit depressing looking at properties that have fallen into disrepair and areas that have been neglected. As you know, that was a focus of my running for election back in 2016. And as a result of that, we've put together an entire redevelopment agency, went out to developers to look for individuals who could turn these properties into the performing type of properties that we need, areas that can enhance the business corridor of Route 18 and provide money to our tax base so that we could put some stability and control on property taxes, as it's almost completely borne in this town by residential property tax property owners. So let me go through each property in a sequence. For the first project that the agency undertook was a project on Redsboro Road. Many of you are familiar that there was a piece of property not far from the landfill that really contributed almost nothing to the tax base, and that was an area that was designated as an area in need of redevelopment. It was taken through the entire process, and now on that property sits a 500,000 square foot fulfillment center, which was and will be rented out completely by FedEx. And that project, as many of you know, is already ready to go. They've been providing redevelopment fees to the redevelopment agency. They are out there already looking to hire people, and they are ready to get started in very, very early 2022. So we're real excited about that project because it turns something that was providing virtually no property taxes to the township into something that's providing in the neighborhood of about $400,000 a year to the township. When they developed the adjoining parking lots, which were areas that had been previously owned by the county, that too will provide added revenues to the tax base here in East Brunswick. And that property was held by, like I said, the county, and being a government agency, paid no tax. So these are big net wins for the township, and we're excited to see that actually start to come into fruition and pay their share of taxes and contribute. The second project many people might be familiar with is the area at 110 Tice's, which was the old Wonder Bread factory that stood on that grounds, along with a lot of other industrial projects. That, as many of you may have noticed, even through COVID, was completely demolished. That's going to be an area that handles about 500 apartments, 100 of which help satisfy our 315 affordable housing unit requirement by a fair share housing and the court system. That project is already well underway. The first 2/3 of that project closest to Tice's will be first floor retail with apartments above it. The middle third will be townhouses and duplex apartments. And then the back third is going to be deeded back to the township as an area for public use, where we intend to put up ice rink for public purpose. It will have ultimately in time 2 rinks, built in phases. The first one hopefully starting relatively soon in 2022. And then the other one will be built as the money that's generated from the rinks justifies the building of the second phase. The builder on that project is also looking to widen Tice's lanes. Part of his approval, he had to pay for that. As we all know, Tice's is a township road, so had that had to be widened, it would otherwise have fallen on the burden of taxpayers, but the developer has agreed as part of his approval to widen. Tice's will ultimately be a 5-lane road, and that will go all the way out from approximately where the overpass is for the turnpike all the way to Route 18. Part of that will be done through this builder. Part of it will be done through the Hidden Oaks project, which is on the corner of Harts and Tice's. That was a condition of their approval. And part of it will be borne by the township. Hopefully we'll be able to get some state Transportation Trust Fund money to do some of that work. But we recognize that that road needs a lot of work and that traffic's a big issue there. So widening it, providing a loop road that will take you through the Tice's Lane project and divert a lot of traffic, and the reconstruction of the Renee Road intersection are all parts of mitigation that we need to do in order to make sure that traffic is less of an issue than it clearly is right now. As many of you have seen, again, many of the buildings, they're all down. And in fact, we're told by the builder that a lot of the project has been flattened out and they're ready to be pouring footings for at least the first phase of that project, which you should see this winter. They're not actually inhibited unless there's dramatically cold temperatures in doing a lot of that work even through the winter. So I think that we could be excited about seeing something start to happen there. They're also going to clear some of the area for the hockey rink. It's the obligation of the owner on that property to do all of the site work for the township for that project. The only thing the town will be responsible for will be the building itself, but everything else is paid for by the developer. That takes us to the third project, which is the area that most of us are familiar with, which is the Route 18 redevelopment project. That one involves the area of Loman's Complex and the Gap and the Wiz. Many of you know that they have fallen into disrepair over the last 10, 15, 20 years and are in desperate need of a redevelopment. We've previously, through the agency, named a redeveloper, and that person's been named, and he's in the process now of providing plans and looking to try to secure these properties since they're not owned by him at this point. As most of you know, there was a challenge by some of the landowners in that area to the designation as an area of need and redevelopment with the right to condemn, which we have not done. We've not taken up condemnation at this point. We're hoping that we can come to a conclusion without needing to do that, but it is a tool that the township has at its disposal if we can't seem to get to some sort of easy, fair resolution on these properties. They have been sitting in the court system. Some of these cases have been dismissed. Some of the cases, many of the participants have taken themselves off. And we're now waiting for a judgment from the courts on one of the last remaining lawsuits. But when these are all completed, which we're hoping will be by the end of the year, you should start to see the developer, the named developer, start to pick up some of these properties. The areas in greatest need will be demolished and hopefully see plans to the planning board. We already have an idea what those projects are going to look like, at least the first phase. And as you can imagine, the massive project of this nature will be done in phases over time. Our estimate, the next 3 to 5 years, we should see that to completion. And one of the last projects that the redevelopment agency worked on this year was putting back into an area in need of redevelopment one of the auto salvage yards that most of us are familiar on Harts Lane. Clearly that industry has moved in the direction where they can easily turn around cars quickly and they don't need as much space as they did before, and they clearly don't need to be storing a lot of old vehicles. So what they're doing is they're condensing their project and their business to 1/3 of the property, and 2/3 are going to be used for the building of a industrial housing unit for storage and usage. That project is something that should come on board this year, in addition to the fact that the salvage yard won't be using as much property as before, but the industrial usage will now bring added revenues to the township that we didn't have before. So it's a net win for the property owner, and it's a net win for the township. So we're looking forward to that project coming off this coming year. Finally, one of the objectives of the redevelopment agency in general was to take a look at areas in the township, both on Route 18 and in surrounding areas that are in need of redevelopment, and using the redevelopment laws and initiatives to be able to turn properties around and offer owners or developers the opportunity to do something with property that can enhance it and provide a better opportunity and return on investment for the developers. But in turn, in doing so, by adding value to these properties, brings higher tax revenues to the township. So the agency's objectives going into 2022 are to find other areas that would benefit from a redevelopment designation and work with them to enhance those projects and to help them to make more productive use of their property, and in turn help the township in terms of added revenues to the tax base, which helps all of us keep our taxes under control. You're more than welcome at any time to attend any redevelopment agency meetings, question any of us on what these projects look like. We've done, I think, a pretty good job trying to explain to the public what it is we're looking to put in each of these areas. And I think at the end of the day, any enhancement of the Route 18 corridor will spell the opportunity for other developers, other owners on properties on Route 18 to upgrade their properties as well. Is sort of bringing everybody up to the highest common denominator instead of bringing everybody down to the lowest common denominator. And at the end of the day, if these projects are successful, as we expect, they will bring much higher revenues to the township, which can be used for a whole host of things, whether that is helping with schools in terms of some of their future projects, or contributing to the water system and infrastructure needs that we have here in the town. These revenues are all going to be used in places that helps the residents the most, not the least of which is to keep property taxes at some stable rate so that some of these projects help offset the burden that property tax owners, residential property tax owners here in the town have had to bear for years. And sort of to round all of this out, we have a lot of talk about development and projects, and you know, these are all exciting as we really recreate a Route 18 corridor that clearly centers on entertainment and destination. We all know that the old retail of the past is gone the way of the internet, and so there's not the need for as much retail space as there was before. So as we redevelop and re-engineer this type of space, we need to keep in mind that we want things that people need to leave their houses to do. And I think that what we're looking at on this corridor truly appeals to that mentality and brings people out to restaurants and to hotels and to places where you need to interact. And that's the vision for the Route 18 of the future, of the next century. But with all this development talk, I think it's also important that we recognize on the flip side, we have areas of town that we're actually developing and trying to recreate rural park walk space that has not been utilized before. Many of you may know that we just opened up Beaver Dam Park off of Fresh Ponds Road, which was an old Superfund site that had been cleaned up over the last 3-4 decades. It was returned clean by the DEP and the EPA and is now used as a recreational area for walking and hiking and observation of nature. It's really been undisturbed for the last 4 decades. But that's not where it ends. We're also looking at developing a park not far from the Elks Lodge on Lake Farrington, which is going to be used primarily for Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts for camping grounds, but open to the public and on pristine property that literally sits right on several edges of Farrington Lake. It's absolutely beautiful. And finally, we have another piece of property in the rural section of town that is township owned, about 26 to 27 acres off of Riva by the Linder Farm, that also looks out onto Lake Farrington. It's got a beautiful dam and property that very few people have been able to have access to, only those that have property that backs up to the township property. But this is something that we're also over the next couple of years, looking to develop into passive recreation so that all of us could recognize some of the beautiful land that we have right here in the township and give back to residents an opportunity to enjoy the fact that East Brunswick is such a diverse, beautiful, big town that has areas that all of us should be able to enjoy. So that's our goals with development, and I, again, don't want people to constantly think that when we say that, we only mean development on Route 18. There's a lot of other areas of the township that could be developed into things that are more passive and recreational in nature, and our goal is to provide both to the residents of the township. So with that having been said, I know that was kind of a quick 40,000-foot view of what we're doing here in the town on redevelopment, but it's very exciting, and I think we'll start to see a lot of this stuff really start to come out from the ground in 2022, which is why I'm so excited about the prospects for what we're going to see next year. With that, I wish everybody a Merry Christmas, a Happy Holidays, and of course a happy and healthy New Year.